I am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
And so it is. Hello, Essence. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. It's good to be back with you after my wild adventure to Toronto for the New Icon intensive movie experience. And I just arrived home yesterday, so I'm very much still in the flow and expansion and really, expansion is probably the word. And so it's been an interesting process to, feel into today's show, to what wants to be shared, and do I have something that's ready to be shared? And what I could feel is there's an interest in what that experience was like. And so I am happy to be the conduit of flow for you to actually feel the vibration of what that experience was and is, and also to discern if there might be medicine in it for you. So we're just going to kind of process on the fly, and I'll be sharing what feels most present to me now, and then I am open to receiving any questions you may have about the experience as I go through the explanation of it. So probably the easiest way to send me a question is there's a little chat button, I think, on the player that you're listening to. So if you click on the chat button, you should see a chat box will pop up where I've written Hello Essence. If you see that, you know you're in the right space. And you can type me any questions you have during the show there. And we may take callers later as well. We'll kind of just see how that rolls. But just so you know, you can reach me that way with questions too. So let's dive in. And I'm going to begin with one of the coolest parts of the experience, or one of the lasting pieces that I know that I'm now going to implement in each of my workshops and intensives going forward, is we began with an exercise. And so I'm going to lead you through an exercise that's like the one that we did. And the point of the exercise is to really presence ourselves. So many times when we arrive in a space, we come with an external motivation, right? So how do we typically open a space as we introduce ourselves? And so immediately we're giving outside of ourselves rather than actually turning inward first and tuning in with what's happening, what's present, where are we, what is here, you know? And so I'm going to invite you to take a minute here with me and go ahead and just close your eyes. If you're driving, obviously don't close your eyes, but even if you're driving, you can take a moment to check in with yourself internally. And then if you're in a space where you can safely do this, go ahead and just for a minute, just see if you can let go of whatever you're doing. If you're eating your lunch or checking your emails, just put that on pause for a moment. And as you close your eyes and receive a couple deep breaths, I want you to feel yourself in the space of listening to this radio show. Even if you're listening to it on replay, just tune in with being here at point X. And then I want you to reflect on what you've gone through to get here, right? So maybe back up to, the last 24 hours or, even the last couple of days, if that's more present to you. And I want you to start from the very beginning, and you can do this by words or you can do it by visualizing, but it's a recapitulation, really, of what you've been through to get here. So there might be like, oh, there were storm clouds, 2 days ago when I was in that thing with my relationship. And then, this happened and that happened and that happened. So it's not about getting lost in the story of it, but more like a bird's eye view as you just notice, what you've been through to actually arrive here in this moment. So I'm going to be quiet for a few moments here while you take a look. And then as you find yourself arriving here, go ahead and just tune in with what is present. What's happening in your body? What's happening in your energy space? Are there any emotions present? If so, what are they? And whatever is there, allow it to be okay. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to judge it. Just say hello to it. And then imagine that you can drop down and into your body so that if there were a driver's seat in your body in this moment, you could actually root into it right in your hips and pelvis, right? That is the animating place. So imagine you can just drop a floor or 2 or 6, depending on where you tend to hang out. And then go ahead and wiggle your hips as if you could spread your sit bones and wiggle them down into some warm sand. And then when you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes. And so I encourage you to start making this part of your practice when you arrive anywhere. There's a way that we can go through our lives always kind of leading ourselves, so we're on the radio show, but we're sort of half at the radio show because a lot of us is in whatever we were doing before we got here. And then there's a big portion of us that went out ahead to what we're going to be doing next. And we might even be split here in this moment between a couple things. And so it's like bringing that level of presence and intentionality to each moment, because that's where essence lives. That's where we give space for the essence to breathe, and also where we can begin to listen to essence. So it's like we create a crack or an opening for essence to have an invitation to be present. So hello again, essence. It's easier to see you now. So let's talk about this new icon experience. If you are on my list, you saw a picture of a couple pictures. And if you're in the tribe, I shared some pictures there too if you are not on the list or in the tribe and you'd like to see some cool pictures of this experience, you can join us in the tribe. It's facebook.com/groups/Wild Soul Medicine Radio Tribe. And there are more pictures to come. So it will be a fun place to sort of hang out as things evolve and more info becomes available. But I just want to start with saying that this experience was everything I hoped it would be and more. And it truly was a fostering of essence. And, I think the first thing I want to say about it is what Laura Hollick does is, of course, she is an artist. She really is truly an artist and a creative and magnificently unique in what she does. And I really summarize this whole experience as essence as art, right? Essence as art. So, how I do essence in my work is like essence as the animating principle, right? So essence as the life force behind anything else. And, Laura expresses essence in what's true for her, which is art. So it's really interesting because there's certainly a way that this experience could have been done in a way that looked very similar, but would not at all have been connected to essence. So what I mean by that is you could have someone who said, let's bring, some powerful women together who have, a message and a following, and let's take some cool artistic pictures of them and let's make it into a movie and then let's, advertise it, right? And anybody could do that. But what Laura does is essence is the driving force behind the art, behind the final product, behind the sharing of what has emerged. And so I think that's really important because as you're discerning where you want to put your energy and your time, it's not about the mechanics. So I just want to make sure you're not getting hung up on the details of like, oh, if I work with Laura Hollick, then that would be a safe thing. Because maybe someday Laura Hollick wouldn't show up in essence. I doubt that, but it's possible. I mean, someday I might not show up in essence. And so it's really the discernment is in what is the driving force? Like, what's the motivation? What's the energetic? And, as I talked about with the High Priestess book project, there were moments when that seemed like it was going to be an essence, or maybe when it even was, but then, it veered off course. And that's exactly how our lives are, right? So sometimes we're easily in essence, and then other times it's like we cannot find it. It's like the needle in the haystack. And so we're always kind of just navigating. And it's a spiral route, it's a spiral dance where, essence is not linear, and it's not like it's this and then we go here and then, and then it's that, right? But it's like this ever winding path, so we're sort of weaving back and forth. And then there's a compass, a navigational compass somewhere in the middle of there. And then we're just kind of feeling, are we next to that? Are we close to that? And so as soon as you try to pin down a plan or, even a naming that we are here or a claiming of something, it stops being an essence. And so it was really wild to watch. There's a lot of time and effort and money wrapped up in this project, right? Of bringing in all of these women from, all of us were from another country, most of us, other than Laura, right? So we're, migrating into Canada, and there's photographer and makeup and, materials and all of these things. And so it would be very easy for someone in charge of that to say, okay, so here's the plan. We're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. And then here's what the shots will look like, and here's what we're creating. And it was none of that. It was really none of that. It was a very, very loose structure, which allowed maximum time for flow and container. And the way that Laura held the space was very much like watching, so so literally like truly holding space. A lot of people say holding space, but they actually don't know what that means. And it's more of a like new agey term of like, I'm watching what happens. But holding space actually means energetically creating a container and then tending the container with what is needed in a moment. And so she facilitated very little because there was already a lot of magic happening in the container. And then, like an example is, so we had a whole afternoon where we were shooting out in the woods. And so we have these amazing portals that we made. We have all this fabric. Like, we don't even have dresses, right? We have a pile of fabric, and we're going to walk out into the woods, and then we're going to somehow drape the fabric in a way that looks like something on us, like clothing. And then we're going to stand somewhere, and we're going to hold our portal, and we're going to take a picture. Like, that's the looseness of the structure. So you've got 8 women doing that. And it lent itself to the most beautiful, magical moments of what was alive for us in that moment. Rather than Laura storyboarding out, like, this is how I see Jody, and this is how I think a cool picture would look, and this is how all of those will end up fitting together into something that makes sense. She let essence be the driving force. And because of that, when you do that, essence magically places all of the pieces so that there is resonance, because essence always resonates, because truth always resonates. So, we were all just very much in the flow of what was wanting to happen. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And we were all so much in the experience that it wasn't about, did we get it, or are we doing the thing? It was like, okay, what feels good? What is the expression of how I'm feeling right now? And what is my connection to this color, to this portal, to this, to what's wanting to be birthed from me? And so, Laura wasn't telling us anything about how we should look. It was like, what do you want? Go spend time with yourself, find a spot that feels right, and then find a movement or a pose that feels like it's resonant, And I have to tell you, I conducted my very first live event that I held a couple years ago at my house. I had 20 women who had been in a year-long program with me, and I hosted them at my house for a weekend for a graduation ceremony. And that is exactly how I ran the weekend. I had a very loose structure. I had a little more structure then than I definitely would now. So I had like a sort of like a backup agenda, but it was still pretty loose. And then we spent the weekend really just letting essence guide us. So whatever felt good, that's what we did. And what was amazing is this was before I had done my shamanic branding process. And so after this event, it was a couple weeks later that I did the shamanic branding. And what was so cool is that what was showing up in the shamanic process were so many elements of what had occurred in that weekend where, like, for example, we were all barefoot. And there was this whole fire circle that happened. And then coincidentally, the woman who showed up to offer some breathwork sessions at the event also happened to be a fire eater. And so she took some women through actually eating fire at the event, which is now, going to be a staple of the work that we do is, fire's kind of all through my brand and my essence. It was one thing after another where you couldn't have planned that. You could have spent hours cognitively figuring out. You could have hired people and spent a lot of money trying to make an event that would be an expression of essence and that would cohesively brand, right? We didn't do any of that. We just showed up and followed the energy, and magically it all came together. And not only did it come together in some kind of like businessy, it worked way, it was like it came together in a magical, everyone could feel that miracles were occurring. And I would say, those of you in the tribe can share, but I would say that it actually was, one of the most magical experiences of a lot of our lives. It still is like a highlight of mine. So that's what can happen when you flow with essence. And, when you first start to flow with essence, it can feel scary because it's such a departure from how we typically navigate, right? So normally we go head down. And so it's always in the mind, and we're thinking and we're learning, and the ego is in the driver's seat. And so when we start being in essence, it's like we're constantly trying to grab the reins again. Like, well, is this going to turn out? And like, what if it doesn't? And then this and then that. And so it takes a little practice, right? We have to strengthen our surrender muscle and our letting go muscle and our ego wanting to check, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? So, just so you know, it's not always comfortable. And that's part of nurturing our essence, right? Is letting the essence come more forward. And then once you do that time and time again, it starts to become more relaxing. And actually it feels the opposite. So when you're used to navigating from essence and somebody tries to come in with a structure or with a limitation, now it's sort of like, what was that? Ooh, I don't like that. So that's how it may evolve in your system. Is at first essence feels awkward, then you do it more and more and more, and then actually not being essence becomes the awkward thing. So essence as art, that was a beautiful experience. There was also a moment, I'm really excited to see how this turned out, but we decided that we had a lot of musical women in the group this year. We had Cora Flora, who's an amazing, beautiful singer. We had Jess Johnson and Ariel White, who are, Jess wrote the theme song, The Untamed Anthem, and her wife, Ariel, both amazing musicians. We had Alia, who is a musician, and she's a DJ and plays lots of festivals. So we had these, really anchored musical voices in our group. And so we decided to do an essence exercise related to sound, right? So we all sat in a circle and we put a microphone in the middle and we started recording with zero plan. We had no discussion whatsoever about what was the point, what were we trying to do, what were we going to get to. It was just like, that's all we knew is like, this is a sound exercise around essence. Let's see what happens. Okay. And, so we probably did that for maybe 30 minutes. And it was, one sound morphing into a song, morphing into words, morphing into rhythms, tears flowing. It sounded like angels singing. And you could absolutely feel like the grace of divinity moving through the space because everybody was just internal, like our eyes were closed and we were listening, and then whatever was wanting to move through us, we were contributing that. And it was absolutely gorgeous and probably the best release moment for me of the whole weekend. And I know that after we did that, Laura's partner, Kevin, who was recording it, went and listened and he said, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And so it may end up being the theme song of the movie, or it may be used somewhere. And so when and if that becomes available, I will share that with you as well. But it was absolutely magical. And of course could not have happened because as soon as you start planning it and thinking about it, then the ego wants to come in and say like, well, is my voice good enough? And, where do I come in? And what do I do again? And right. And that's when the flow stops. That's where the magic ends. And so, that kind of brings me to the next thing that I want to share with you is it is so important to put yourself around people who also play in essence. Because it was so refreshing to be in this space where all of these women are up to the same thing. And so, there wasn't someone in the group who needed more of a plan or who needed more details. It was like, oh, we're doing this now? Great. Let's see what happens, And so if you don't yet have a community where that is so, add it to your intention. Add it to your intention list that you start to find community where people understand essence and love to play in it. The tribe is one of those places. And, there are other ones that exist. So start calling your core group together. And of course, all of the events that we have are that, all of the individual work that we do is that. So Viv and I are playing in essence all the time. We're going to be launching a group program in October where we're going to be spending, 8 or 10 months together, actually excavating essence and learning to discern with our intuition, where essence lives and where it doesn't live and all of that. So that's coming up as well. But, there are many ways that can show up to support you. So if you don't already have a place where that's occurring, definitely call that in. Because not only is it so comforting to your own essence to have the safe space to play and to look, because it's very vulnerable, right? It's very vulnerable to go into those next levels. Like we talked about last week, it's not always comfortable. And so, if you're around people who are judgy or stuck or in ego, your essence might not want to come out. But when you're being lovingly held and seen, then your essence might peek its head out and say, oh, okay, what's happening? Oh, this next? Yes, right? And, also there's so much medicine there. Like I received some beautiful medicine this weekend from one of the women who was there, who was talking about how essence had recently shown up in her relationship, her intimate partnership, and that she has this really beautiful intimate partnership. And then she realized that there was a place where she was attached, right? That she was attached to this partnership continuing. And she realized that that attachment was actually a limit to her freedom. And so she had a discussion with her partner about uncoupling, I want to be with you, but I need to also let you go, and I need you to let me go so that we can be free. And then let's see what happens. And so they literally dove off the cliff into separation and the pain of that, and then emerged into reconvening in a completely newly constructed way that was divine oneness, actually merging with freedom in every direction. And I mean, where else can you have conversations like that? Where else are people doing things like that in their lives? It was so inspiring and beautiful and tearful, and I just felt very enriched by it. So, the more I deepen into essence, the less I can really entertain conversations that are not essence, that are about the bullshit and the minutia of life. It just doesn't feel like it serves or like it's, anything real to me anymore, unless we're talking on these more basic, true levels. So, yeah. So get yourself around a gang of people who are doing essence. Okay, so let's talk some more about sticky places. So one of the things that I always want to be doing for us is dispelling a myth that there is some arrival point. So of course, that's the trap of if your ego is wanting to find a destination or wanting to find a safe place to say oh, if I get an essence, then I will have a cool looking picture, or I will be invited to be an iconic essence, and then I will have made it, right? And so I think it's really important for you to know that always there is stickiness, always there is fear, always there is dissonance, as we're moving into these new expressions. So I want to share some of those with you from my experience. Because this wasn't a totally feel-good experience. It was miraculous and expansive and amazing. And it stretched me and it pissed me off and and there were moments where I was really not loving it. And so some of those things looked like there was a fair amount of anxiety going in, right? So as I was heading there, it was, I'm not super creative. Am I going to love crafting all day? A lot of the women who are there are very, self-expressed in those kinds of ways, and they love those mediums. And will I be able to hang with them, right? So totally not essence, but my essence being is my essence good enough to play with other essences, right? So those are commonalities. There were, other times, near the end of the first day, we had probably been at it for maybe about 10 hours. And someone in the group mentioned hey, does anybody notice that whatever color you are, that particular chakra is having issues right now? And we're all checking in yep, that is totally happening. So I was blue, which is the third eye. and I had a splitting headache, right? And other women were having the same thing, like if it was root chakra, yes, like issues happening in the root chakra and so on. And, so what was happening is we were having energetic shifts as we brought ourselves into alignment with the vibration of the color, the vibration of the chakra. And so there can be physical discomfort as our bodies align with, how does the essence inhabit this particular place? And, in a lot of ways, like the third eye is really home for me because I'm psychic and that's where I see. And so in those ways, it's a comfortable place. But the color blue is not a comfortable place for me because it's not a color I wear. It's not a color I particularly love. Particularly this indigo color was a stretch for me. I didn't have any clothing in that color, as I've mentioned. And so, it was funny when I started, even playing with is there a certain color that goes with your essence? And even if it's a no at some point, I believe that we really are the full spectrum of colors. So you may be leaning into that and then having new awarenesses. And so that was happening for me too, is integrating, can I be blue? Am I blue? What does blue mean? How does that fit in here? So that was a sticky place. There was sticky places. So we made these amazing portals. And you'll see them in some of the pictures. I shared my portal actually on my Facebook page. I'll put it in the tribe as well. So the portal is really, it's a representation of our iconic essence. So it's like an invitation into it as well as an expression of it. And it's a portal for us, the ones who made them, like a way to sort of get us into the vibration of our shoot and our expression of our essence. But for me, it's also an invitation into, essence as my work. And I believe it was that for everyone as well, right? So it's a representation because all of us, our work is an expression of our essence. It's not a separate thing. So it was an integration. So we did a lot of energy work and some shamanic processes around energetically opening these portals and then creating them, right? And so it was labor intensive. We just had these piles of materials and then we were, wrapping and cutting and tying and we were doing that for hours while others of us were getting hair and makeup done. And so, of course, things were occurring throughout that process, which are metaphors for other things. And that's how essence is. So in essence, what I always say is one thing is everything. So because essence, remember, is the true invariable nature of a thing. So if I'm doing my portal and I'm becoming frustrated because it feels like it's tedious and it's taking too long, that's not just about the portal, right? That's also something that happens for me other places. And that's always the case. So, you can use anything you're up to and use it as a portal for yourself into a pattern, right? Into medicine. What can I learn about this, about myself? And so for me, that was piece one is that's also how I feel about my work. This is taking too long and it's really tedious. And is there a way we can do this faster and with more people and, more completely? And so I was looking for who can I delegate? Who could I give this to who could wrap this, fabric all the way around this hoop? And, who could tie these tiny pieces of yarn on here to hold these sticks, and things like that. So on the one hand, there's an honoring, that, yeah, I am a fast mover and I don't like the minutia of the details. And then there's also is there an expansion there for me? Is there a story that I could lose that would allow me to have more peace and more unity, So that was an example of one piece. Another piece that happened is I had this vision of the portal that it needed to have a crystal floating in the center of it. And I had brought a crystal. And so I had tried multiple ways of tying the crystal so that it would land in the center with the point up, And I could not get it to work. Every time I would tie it, it would turn sideways or the crystal would slip out of the yarn. And I was getting really grumpy, So I'm tired and my head hurts and the thing won't, land. And, everybody else was having their own kind of process of things like that. And so Laura came over. Oh, actually, I said, like, Laura, can you tie this for me? Can you just fix this? And so she, as she's space holding, she comes in and she doesn't tie it for me. She said, I will tie it for you if you want me to, but I wonder what the essence of that is, like what's happening for you. And so I told her my sad story, and she said, I wonder why it won't sit up straight. And she said, it looks like almost like it needs grounding. I was like, of course it does, because this whole piece that I was feeling into with my essence was a lot more up energy, right? So this galactic energy of not just being so earthbound, but actually incorporating this whole other aspect of my essence, which is alien and galactic and up and vast, right? And so in that space, as in the energy space, things are easy and you can just magically make a crystal float, right? And it's not hard. But then there's this whole earth plane where there's gravity and there's struggle and there's density. And that's an ongoing relationship for me where I'm navigating the density and the light and marrying the two and finding the pathway out. And so it was really a beautiful awareness of really that's what the headache was about. And, all of those pieces was feeling like, one, that I needed the grounding and I was missing it. And then two, there was an awareness that I was trying to create a whole separate essence, right? So I went there thinking, okay, I need the next expression of my iconic essence. And somewhere in there was some faulty programming that I have to leave this essence behind in order to be the next essence, right? And so I was feeling like I had to create a whole separate thing, And I was feeling the activation, but then I was getting concerned, like, oh, I don't know the words for this, and I don't know how I'm going to do an interview about this, or really speak about it because I just have a sense of it. And so ultimately what I was starting to then realize in that moment was it doesn't have to be a whole separate thing, right? Like I am all of the stuff I already was, and I'm adding another layer to it, right? So that's how essence works, is it's not like you're getting rid of one layer to add the next layer. You're just adding the next layer. So it's always expanding, like a flower or like the onion, you're just adding layers to the outside of it, to the expression of it, to the reach of it, so that it can more fully inhabit all of the depth of who you are, rather than just being one thing that you replace with another small thing that you replace with another small thing, right? So those were some of the sticky places. And so, just navigating those, like awareness is huge for navigating those. And of course, being in this tribe of women who also get sticky places, who were also having sticky places, sometimes offering wisdom, sometimes just sharing their own sticky places where it was like, okay, great. It feels good to know I'm not the only one doing this. And then, watching them gracefully move through or have an awareness or facilitate one another so that we could have those awarenesses occur. So one of the other really cool places that helped me to integrate all of this work was at the middle of day 2. We actually took a field trip out of the studio and we went to this amazing waterfall. It was like this huge 2-tiered waterfall in this gorgeous ravine with these trees and such a sacred cathedral space. And so again, this is the beautiful thing about essence, is it wasn't over facilitated. So we went there, we each received a crystal, and Laura said, we're going to spend, 20 minutes or so here. So find a space and be with your essence and be with your crystal, and we'll reconvene when it's time, right? Just so beautiful. In essence, it doesn't take a lot of words. Really, it can just be a transmission. And so some people were playing in the waterfall, and some people were meditating, and some people were communing with a tree or two. I happened to find a high rock and there was an uprooted tree, so the roots were actually pointed right at the rock, and so I sat there like with my hands on the roots, on the rock, feeling the spray of this waterfall, and I just landed. And I think nature is the best teacher of essence. I really, really do, because there just is truth in nature, and anytime we get lost in these human concepts and ideals and like, how can I make this work, or what should I do? It's like, if you just go out in nature, there is endless medicine there. And so write that down if you think you'll forget or go unconscious to it. Nature as teacher about essence. And so, it can be simple. You can just go sit and feel and say, what's here for me? Any place that you are, a blade of grass can have medicine for you. A ray of sunshine can have medicine for you. It is where truth lives. And so the waterfall was teaching me so much. It was teaching me about flow and surrender and change, and particularly about power versus force, and the inevitability of my mission. And, that I don't actually have to work for it. It says inevitable is this powerful waterfall reaching the planet. I'm in and of that flow. And so I can just be that. And that is what softens the rocks and what has the water reach, the surface. And so that all meant something to me. And I was just receiving that so beautifully. And then I had my crystal, and then it was teaching me that all of the power of that waterfall actually existed in that tiny, tiny crystal as well. And that's how easy things could be, is like waving this crystal or touching with a crystal and having that huge amount of change occur. And then I took the crystal and I touched it to my third eye, which was my color, right? And I just felt my whole mind and brain expand. The headache lifted, the consciousness widened, and I landed actually in myself again. And that was sort of the final integration of that whole idea of there has to be a separate essence, So nature is teacher. And then, of course, we spent the rest of that whole day out in nature, filming and playing and sitting in the trees and talking. And that always feels really good to my system. So if you're not spending time out in nature, I highly recommend that you prioritize it and find some regular time and space to get yourself outside, even if it's 2 minutes to stand barefoot on a patch of grass outside your office space. That will still do wonders for your essence and for your soul. So let's see. If you have any questions, the chat box, someone has located it, is a little bubble with 3 dots on it on the player. So if you want to type a question, if there's anything I haven't answered yet that you are curious about, and it can be anything, even if it's something frivolous, my sense is there might be medicine even in that. So anything else that you would like to know about the weekend, the process, me, the people that were in it, any of those things. The movie actually comes out in October, so I will definitely be keeping you posted as that is all occurring. And so let's see. Is there anything else I want to share while we wait? If you can't find the chat box and you want to just call in and ask a question, you can also do that. The number to call in is 937-552-2747, 937-552-2747. So, yeah, I'm happy to take a call or two if you'd like to play live. Let's see. There's one other thing that wants to be shared. Let me see what it is. Oh, yeah. So the photo that I shared in the email of my iconic essence, right, the Galactic Bridge Builder photo, that was really a cool process, too, because, again, we each had like a 4-hour slot to come, and we recorded an interview, and then we did the makeup and the hair and all of that. And then we did a photo shoot, in our iconic essence. And so again, I really assumed that I was going to show up that day and Laura would say like, here's what your iconic essence is that I see, and here's what you're wearing today, and here's what the makeup will be. And she didn't. She did exactly what we do here on the show and what we do in my business and how we flow in coaching is she just showed up present. What's happening for you? What are you feeling? Where are you? And so we talked a little bit, and then we played. We played with some of the things I had brought, like my feathers and my ring and, some things that meant some things to me. And then I literally sit in the makeup chair with no plan, and it all just starts to unfold. And of course, she's found a beautiful makeup artist who works in essence as well. And so she's kind of just in the flow, and she starts. And then we're adding, and then we're, just kind of playing with it in the same way that I'm playing with the show of like, oh, so that felt good. And now what? And then what's alive next? And then even as I got out to do the pictures, here I am in this really cool, makeup, and we tried a few poses, and then like she was checking in with me about the experience, which is so perfect because I think I've shared with you, like when I did the photo shoot for my brand, I was like, I don't actually care about having pictures. What I want is a cool experience. And so as I'm taking these photos, which Laura has a big investment in, right, that they turn out and that they look like something, she's completely unattached. And she was asking me like, how's the experience for you? What are you feeling right now? Do you feel yourself landing or not? Because she knew that was a piece I'd been struggling with. And it was literally like as I was doing the photo shoot with the makeup at the end of the experience, last couple photos that I really landed, and that's when the magical shot occurred, And so that's how magic happens. That is what happens. Like you just keep reaching for essence, and you just keep allowing and expanding and flowing and getting out of the way. And then those magical things will happen. You can't script them. You couldn't plan them. You couldn't make them any more special. But that's what's waiting for you on the other side of, of letting your essence come out to play and losing the ego. And so it is, right? So that's where that all lives and flows. So, I don't see any questions coming in on chat, and Viv, I don't actually see my connection with you either. So if we have somebody who is calling in, you can go ahead and put them through. I can't actually see if that occurs or not. And so we'll just pause and see if we have a caller. And if we don't, I'll see if there's a final thought that wants to be shared. Yeah. Okay. So there's a final thought that wants to be shared. So I just want to say, reference to this idea of iconic essence, because I think there is a way that some of us can look at even that term iconic and think that that means something about each of us women who are in this film, right? That like, Jodie is an icon because she has gotten invited to be in this film, and her essence is somehow more special than my essence. And so what I want to say is the reason that this is called iconic essence is because it's epic in the way that you are epic. You are absolutely as epic as any woman in that film. And when you let your essence shine, the medicine of that will bring an activation and a completion to the whole that does not exist without it. Right? So what was really neat about the way that Laura holds the spaces, she does it in rainbow, right? So there are all of these colors because the rainbow is a full spectrum, right? It's full and complete when all of the colors are there. And so it was a play on us being our individual iconic essences and then activating a whole. And we did a really cool visual, which will be part of the film, where we took all of our portals and we ended up tying them together with fabric. And then we were all inside the fabric and we made like a dragon, so we called ourselves Rainbow Activating Dragons. And it was a beautiful metaphor for how our individual essences really do come together to make something larger than us. And so my intention for you is that you get that we need you to be an essence, right? We are whole and complete in and of ourselves, and we are all more synergistically complete and whole when you become so as well, right? So that is my enthusiasm about participating in this project. It's my love for this work, is that it really serves as a portal and an invitation for you to become more of who you are, not to give your power to anyone else, but to really say, yes, I am that. And I have to tell you, last year when the New Icon movie came out, I knew most of the women who were in that, and my essence had this feeling of like, I should be in that movie, but I wasn't attached, but I was like, I should be in that movie. And then I think she did a contest last year where you could like send in a video and apply to be, the eighth one or whatever. And I was like, I don't really have time to do it, but like, I know that I am that. And it was just that much of a claiming in my system. And then here I am this year actually in it. And so I don't take that to mean that I became, something that I wasn't, but I take it to mean that I am ready to be that fuller expression of my essence, right? To actually be the icon of myself. And that's really what we're all up to here. So, I do have one question that I'm going to answer because it does feel like a good one. So Jude is asking, does adding in or adding on feel the most like what happens with essence, or does pulling layers off seem more true? And so what I would say is it's really both. How it feels in my system is it's both. That, our essence is always in there, but when we start this work, it feels like it's really covered up. So there's lots of boxes and debris and other people's stuff in front of the essence actually having space to live. And so some of the work we do is letting go, right? Which we've done on the show several times, of moving people's stuff out in order to let the essence shine. And then, sometimes we're adding on, right? Where we're turning up the volume of the essence. So we're sort of plumping the essence up from the inside out. And then I think sometimes in experiences like this one, it was more like there was such a magnetic pull from outside of myself, like such an invitation to be more of myself, that this was actually something that felt like a larger container outside of me that was like pulling me forward to my edges. So, I think there are a lot of ways of freeing the essence, but the thing that's always constant is it's both and. It's yes and. So it's this tiny kernel that you may be aware of about your essence now, and the next level that you become aware of too, right? It's all of that. And there will be layers of deepening into that. Like I've known for a long time that I was a teacher and an alchemist of sorts. And as I continue to deepen into that and embrace the fullness of who I am, I realize that I'm a galactic teacher, not just a, teacher in this one small area and kind of a coach, but no, there's this huge universal teaching that I'm here to offer. And I'm not just an alchemist in that I can synthesize different methods together to create something better, but I'm an alchemist in that I actually am a sorceress who can use magic to really alchemically create huge transformation on a planetary level, right? So it's yes and always. So Jude, I hope that answers your question. And so I can't wait to share with you, as this movie unfolds and comes together. And, from being in the experience, it was an amazing experience in and of itself. And I've really not seen any of the finished product for myself or anyone else. So I had the experience of being in this dragon, on a hilltop overlooking this beautiful ravine of trees and singing dragon activation songs and all of those things. And I have no idea what that looks like. So my sense is that it will be breathtaking and activating for you as well. And in the meantime, we will continue to activate here every week on our Wednesday show, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time, and many offerings and ways for us to play together and deepen into our relationship coming forward. So we will keep you posted as those develop. And until then, keep being you. Bye, everyone.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. Illumination for God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake.